He lost his home, his family, his future, yet not once did the boy complain to the world. Because while others cried about life being unfair, he was silently becoming stronger than all of them in a small village surrounded by dry mountains and endless dust roads. There lived a boy named Aaron whose life changed long before he was old enough to understand suffering. When he was only 8 years old, his father died during a terrible accident in the mines outside the village. Overnight, everything inside his home became silent. His mother worked endlessly to keep food on the table, but poverty slowly entered their lives like a slow-moving storm that never left. While other children spent afternoons laughing and playing near the river, Aaron carried heavy water buckets across the village and helped his exhausted mother sell vegetables in the market. People often pitied him, but what surprised everyone was this: the boy never complained. Not once. Even during the hottest days, when sweat covered his face and hunger twisted his stomach painfully, Aaron simply continued working quietly. Many villagers assumed he was too weak to express emotions. Others thought he had accepted defeat already. But the truth was very different. Deep inside, Aaron had learned something most adults never understand. Complaining changes nothing. One evening, after an especially difficult day without enough food, his mother apologized through tears because she could not provide him a better life. Aaron gently held her hand and whispered, "We may be poor today, but sadness will not make us stronger." His mother cried harder after hearing those words because they sounded far too wise for such a young boy. As years passed, Aaron's struggles only increased. During winter, cold winds entered their broken house through cracks in the walls. During summer, they often survived on almost nothing. Yet while many people in the village constantly blamed life, fate, and circumstances for their misery, Aaron stayed disciplined. Every morning before sunrise, he woke early to study old books borrowed from a retired schoolteacher nearby. He believed knowledge could eventually free him from suffering. But unlike others, he never complained about how unfair life was while chasing that goal. One afternoon, several boys from wealthier families mocked him publicly because of his torn clothes and worn shoes. "Look at him," one laughed cruelly. "He works like a servant and still thinks he can become successful someday." The boys burst into laughter while villagers watched silently. Aaron looked at them calmly and simply replied, "A person who laughs at struggle has never learned from pain." Then he continued walking without anger. The boys mocked him even louder after he left, believing they had humiliated him. But an old man sitting nearby shook his head slowly and whispered, "That boy already has something they don't: strength without arrogance." Over time, Aaron's silence during hardship became his greatest weapon. While others wasted energy complaining, he used that energy to grow mentally stronger every single day. When Aaron turned 16, disaster struck his life once again. A violent storm destroyed much of the village during the middle of winter. Houses collapsed, crops were ruined, and many families lost everything they owned. Among the destroyed homes was Aaron's small house. By morning, all that remained were broken wooden pieces covered in mud and rain. His mother stood crying in the freezing cold, while neighbors desperately tried saving whatever possessions they could. Some people cursed fate loudly. Others blamed God. Many sat hopelessly beside the ruins of their lives. But Aaron quietly began rebuilding immediately. With freezing hands and exhausted muscles, he carried broken wood piece by piece without saying a single bitter word. One neighbor finally asked him angrily, "How can you stay so calm after losing everything?" Aaron wiped rainwater from his face and answered softly, "Complaining won't rebuild the house." The man stared at him silently, unable to respond. For weeks afterward, Aaron worked harder than ever before. During the day, he helped repair damaged homes across the village to earn small amounts of money. At night, he continued studying beneath a weak candle flame inside a temporary shelter. Exhaustion became part of his daily life, But still he never complained. Slowly, people started noticing something extraordinary about him. Every hardship that broke others seemed to strengthen him instead. While many villagers became bitter after the storm, Aaron became more disciplined. While others drowned in self-pity, he became more focused. An elderly teacher named Samuel watched the boy carefully during this time and eventually invited him for tea one evening. "Why do you never complain?" Samuel asked quietly. Aaron thought for several seconds before replying, "Because life does not owe me comfort." The old teacher's eyes widened slightly. Aaron continued, "Pain is temporary, but weak thinking can destroy a person forever." Samuel leaned back silently, deeply impressed by the wisdom hidden inside such a young mind. Over the following months, he began mentoring Aaron personally, teaching him philosophy, discipline, and Stoic principles from ancient books few people in the village had ever read. Aaron absorbed every lesson carefully. He learned that suffering itself is not what destroys people. It is the way they respond to suffering. He learned that strong men accept hardship without allowing it to poison their minds. Most importantly, he learned that calm endurance during difficult times builds unshakable character. Years later, people in the village would still remember the image of that young boy rebuilding his destroyed life silently while everyone else complained about theirs. Because sometimes the strongest souls are not the loudest ones. Sometimes, as the years passed, Aaron's reputation slowly spread beyond the village. People began recognizing him as the boy who never complained no matter how difficult life became. But while others admired him from a distance, very few truly understood the battles happening inside his mind every single day. Strength did not mean he never felt pain. It meant he refused to let pain control him. Some nights, after working for endless hours under freezing rain or burning heat, Aaron would sit alone outside the broken shelter he still called home and stare silently at the stars above the mountains. Deep inside, exhaustion whispered dangerous thoughts into his mind. Why is life so unfair? Why do others receive comfort while you suffer endlessly? Why continue trying? Those thoughts visited him often, just like darkness visits every human being eventually. But Aaron had learned something powerful from Samuel's teachings. Thoughts only become dangerous when you blindly obey them. So instead of feeding bitterness, he trained himself to endure silently. One cold evening, after an entire week without proper food, Aaron walked into the market, carrying heavy with bundles to sell. His body felt weak from hunger, and his hands shook from exhaustion. Nearby, wealthy merchants laughed loudly while eating expensive meals beside warm fires. A cruel young man noticed Aaron watching them and mocked him openly. "You work harder than anyone here and still remain poor," he sneered. "What's the point of all your discipline?" Several others nearby laughed quietly. Aaron stood silently for a moment before answering calmly, "Discipline is valuable even when rewards are delayed." Then he picked up his remaining wood and continued walking without anger. Samuel, who happened to witness the interaction from across the market, smiled proudly to himself. Later that night, he told Aaron, "Most people complain because they expect life to reward them immediately. But strong people continue forward even when no reward is visible." Aaron listened carefully while warming his hands near the fire. Samuel then added something that will remain in Aaron's mind forever. "A weak man becomes bitter through suffering. A strong man becomes wiser through it." Those words changed the way Aaron viewed hardship completely. From that moment on, every painful experience became training instead of punishment. Every struggle became another opportunity to strengthen his character. And slowly, while others waited for life to become easier, Aaron became stronger than life itself. When Aaron turned 18, his mother became seriously ill during a brutal winter. Her body weakened quickly, and soon she could no longer work at the market. Medical treatment was expensive, far beyond anything Aaron could afford. For the first time in years, fear entered his heart strongly enough to shake him deeply. Every morning before sunrise, he worked carrying stones at construction sites. During afternoons, he repaired damaged fences and roofs across the village. At night, he cared for his mother while studying by candlelight whenever exhaustion allowed it. He barely slept. Some days he barely ate, yet still he never complained. Villagers often asked how he continued enduring such pressure without collapsing emotionally. Aaron always answered the same way. Pain becomes heavier when mixed with self-pity. One evening, after returning home from work, Aaron found his mother crying quietly beside the fire. "You should have had a better life than this," she whispered painfully. "You sacrificed your childhood because of me." Aaron knelt beside her calmly and held her trembling hands. "No," he replied softly. "Struggle taught me things comfort never could." Tears filled her eyes as she listened. Aaron continued, "Many people with easy lives become weak the moment suffering appears, but hardship trained me early." His mother realized then that the poor, exhausted boy standing before her had developed more emotional strength than most grown men ever achieve. Weeks later, Aaron finally earned enough money to bring medicine for her treatment. It was not much, but it slowly helped her recover. During this difficult period, Aaron noticed something important about human nature. Many people who lived comfortable lives complained endlessly about tiny inconveniences, while those who truly suffered often remained the quietest. He realized that complaining is often not caused by pain itself, but by mental weakness toward pain. Strong people accept reality first, then work to improve it. Weak people waste energy resisting reality emotionally. One snowy afternoon, while delivering supplies to a wealthy family, Aaron overheard their son complaining furiously because his expensive coat had been ruined during travel. The boy cursed life dramatically as servants tried calming him down. Aaron stood silently nearby holding heavy boxes in freezing weather, wearing torn gloves and old shoes. In that moment, he understood something clearly. Comfort does not create gratitude. Often it creates fragility. And while others became weaker through luxury, Aaron continued becoming stronger through hardship. Spring finally arrived after the harsh winter, bringing warmer winds and renewed life to the village. Flowers bloomed along the dusty roads. Children returned to playing near the river, and markets became lively once again. Yet despite the changing season, Aaron's routine remained the same: work, discipline, study, and silence. By now, many younger boys in the village secretly admired him. They watched the way he carried himself calmly even during difficult situations. Unlike loud men who constantly bragged about strength, Aaron rarely spoke about himself at all. One afternoon, a group of teenagers approached him while he repaired tools outside Samuel's home. "How do you stay motivated?" one asked. "Doesn't life make you angry?" Aaron paused thoughtfully before replying, "Anger wastes energy I need for growth." The boys listened carefully while he continued. "Most people spend their lives complaining about darkness instead of becoming stronger enough to walk through it." Those words deeply affected them, but not everyone respected Aaron's mindset. Some villagers still viewed his silence as weakness because they believed real strength meant domination and aggression. One man in particular, named Marcus, enjoyed mocking Aaron publicly whenever possible. Marcus was physically strong, wealthy, and arrogant. He constantly bragged about his achievements while insulting poorer villagers. One evening in the crowded market, Marcus laughed loudly while pointing toward Aaron. "Look at this boy," he shouted. "He works endlessly like a slave and still acts calm. Maybe suffering has broken his spirit completely." Several people laughed nervously, while others watched silently. Aaron slowly stood from his workbench and looked directly at Marcus. For several moments, he said nothing. Then he answered calmly, "The loudest people are often fighting weakness inside themselves." The market became completely silent. Marcus's smile disappeared instantly. Furious, he stepped forward aggressively. "You think you're stronger than me?" he snapped. Aaron shook his head softly. "No, but a man who cannot control his emotions is never truly strong." Marcus looked ready to explode with rage, but strangely, he stopped himself because deep inside, he knew the words were true. Aaron returned to his work peacefully while the crowd watched in silence. That night, many people discussed what had happened. For the first time, some villagers realized the quiet boy they once pitied possessed a strength far greater than physical power. Because while Marcus controlled others through intimidation, Aaron controlled himself through discipline. And self-mastery is always stronger than ego. Months later, Samuel invited Aaron to travel with him to a nearby city where scholars gathered to study philosophy, history, and science. Aaron had never left the village before. The city overwhelmed him instantly with its enormous buildings, crowded streets, and endless noise. Everywhere he looked, people rushed desperately chasing money, status, and approval. Yet despite the wealth surrounding them, Aaron noticed something surprising. Many people there seemed deeply unhappy. Wealthy businessmen argued constantly. Influential leaders lived in fear of losing power. Rich families complained endlessly despite having everything Aaron once dreamed of. One evening while walking through the city center, Aaron saw a man screaming furiously at a servant because his expensive carriage had arrived late. Nearby stood another wealthy merchant angrily blaming everyone around him for a failed investment. Aaron watched silently before asking Samuel, "Why do people with so much still suffer so deeply?" Samuel smiled faintly and replied, "Because suffering comes more from the mind than from circumstances." Those words stayed with Aaron powerfully. He realized then that peace does not come automatically from comfort, money, or success. True peace comes from mental discipline. Later during a public discussion among scholars, one arrogant student mocked Aaron openly after learning about his poor background. What wisdom could possibly come from a laborer? He laughed loudly. Several students smirked while waiting for Aaron's reaction, but Aaron simply answered calmly, "Pain teaches lessons pride cannot understand." The room fell silent immediately. An elderly philosopher sitting nearby looked at Aaron carefully before saying, "That sentence contains more wisdom than many books." For the rest of the evening, the arrogant student avoided speaking again. Afterwards, Samuel told Aaron quietly, "You see now, people who truly understand strength rarely need to prove it loudly." Aaron nodded silently. The city taught him something important. Many people spend their lives building impressive appearances while neglecting their inner character completely. But when suffering arrives, and eventually it always does, external success cannot protect an undisciplined mind. Only inner strength survives hardship. After returning from the city, Aaron became even more disciplined than before. He woke earlier, worked harder, and studied longer each night. Yet despite his growing wisdom, life still continued testing him relentlessly. One summer evening, tragedy struck again when Samuel suddenly collapsed from illness. The old teacher's health weakened quickly over the following weeks. Aaron spent every possible moment beside him, helping prepare medicine and reading aloud from Stoic books during quiet nights. One stormy evening, Samuel looked at Aaron weakly and asked, "Do you know why I believed in you from the beginning?" Aaron shook his head silently. Samuel smiled softly. "Because you suffer without becoming cruel." Tears filled Aaron's eyes immediately. Samuel continued, "Most people who lose everything become bitter toward life, but you became stronger and kinder instead." Those words affected Aaron deeply because they revealed the true purpose of Stoicism, not becoming emotionless, but becoming disciplined enough to endure suffering without losing humanity. Days later, Samuel passed away peacefully during the night. For the second time in his life, Aaron felt truly alone. The man who had guided him through years of struggle was gone forever. During the funeral, villagers expected Aaron to collapse emotionally. Instead, he stood quietly beneath the gray sky, calm but deeply saddened. One young boy finally asked him, "Why aren't you angry at life?" Aaron looked toward the mountain silently before answering, "Because death is part of life. Complaining cannot change it." Though his voice remained steady, the pain inside him was enormous. But once again, Aaron chose discipline over bitterness. That evening, sitting alone beside Samuel's old books, Aaron realized something profound. Suffering never truly ends. Loss, pain, and hardship will always exist. But strength is built by how a person carries those burdens. Weak men let suffering poison them. Strong men let suffering refine them. Years passed, and Aaron slowly became respected throughout the region for his wisdom and discipline. People traveled from nearby villages simply to speak with him. Farmers asked for guidance during difficult times. Young men sought advice about anger, fear, and failure. Mothers brought troubled sons, hoping Aaron could teach them strength. Yet despite growing admiration, Aaron remained humble. He still lived simply, still worked daily, and still avoided unnecessary attention. One afternoon, a wealthy businessman arrived in the village after hearing stories about the boy who never complained. Curious and skeptical, the businessman asked Aaron directly, "Do you really believe suffering makes people stronger?" Aaron thought carefully before answering. "No, suffering alone can destroy people. But disciplined suffering creates strength." The businessman looked interested, so Aaron continued. "Many people experience pain and become bitter, angry, and weak. Others experience pain and become wiser, calmer, and stronger. The difference is mindset." The businessman remained silent while listening. Aaron then pointed toward a sword hanging inside the workshop. "Steel becomes strong through fire," he explained softly. "Human character works the same way." Those words deeply impressed the visitor. Before leaving, the businessman offered Aaron a high-paying position in the city, believing someone with such wisdom deserved a greater life. But Aaron politely declined. "Why?" the businessman asked in shock. Aaron smiled faintly and answered, "Peace is more valuable than status." The businessman stared at him speechless because he had spent his entire life chasing wealth while constantly feeling empty inside. As Aaron watched him leave, he understood something clearly. Many people lose themselves trying to gain the world. But true Stoic strength comes from mastering yourself first. One winter night, while heavy snow covered the village in silence, Aaron sat alone beside a fire reflecting on his life. He thought about his father, his mother's suffering, Samuel's teachings, and every painful struggle that shaped him into the man he had become. For the first time in many years, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of everything he had endured. Tears quietly filled his eyes as memories returned one by one. Yet even in that emotional moment, Aaron felt no bitterness toward life, only gratitude, because he finally understood that suffering had not ruined him, it had revealed him. Most people fear hardship because they believe comfort creates happiness. But Aaron had learned something different. Comfort can disappear overnight. Money can vanish. People can leave. But character stays. Discipline stays. Inner strength stays. Suddenly, a young traveler knocked on his door asking for shelter from the storm. Aaron welcomed him warmly and shared food beside the fire. During their conversation, the traveler admitted he felt angry at life because of constant failures and disappointments. Aaron listened quietly before saying something simple but powerful. Life becomes lighter when you stop asking why hardship happens and start asking what hardship can teach you. The traveler stared into the flames silently while considering those words. Aaron then added, Complaining keeps pain alive. Acceptance allows growth. Outside, the snowstorm continued covering the world in darkness. But inside the small house, wisdom quietly passed from one soul to another as Aaron grew older. Stories about him spread far beyond the mountains surrounding the village. People called him many things: the silent worker, the disciplined man, the stoic boy who lost everything but never complained. Yet Aaron himself never cared about titles or reputation. To him, strength was not about being admired by others. It was about remaining peaceful despite life's storms. One spring morning, years after his difficult childhood had ended, Aaron walked through the same market where he had once been mocked for his poverty and torn clothes. Many of the boys who laughed at him long ago were now bitter, unhappy men still complaining about life. Some blamed society. Others blamed bad luck. Few had built meaningful inner strength because comfort had protected them from discipline for too long. As Aaron passed by calmly, one of them finally asked quietly, "How did you survive everything without becoming angry?" Aaron stopped walking and looked at the man gently. After several moments, he answered, "Because pain is temporary, but becoming bitter can last forever." The man lowered his eyes silently. Aaron then continued walking through the market beneath the warm sunlight, peaceful and unshaken. People watched him with admiration, but Aaron barely noticed. He had learned long ago that true strength does not need attention. It simply exists quietly inside disciplined souls. And that is why the boy who lost everything eventually became stronger than everyone who once pitted him one evening, after a long day at work. Aaron sat near the river outside the village while the sunset painted the sky orange and gold. A young boy approached him slowly, carrying a torn school bag and nervous eyes. "Can I ask you something?" the boy whispered. Aaron nodded gently. The boy hesitated before saying, "Why does life seem harder for some people than others?" Aaron remained silent for several moments while watching the river move calmly over stones. Finally, he answered, "Because struggle shapes different souls for different purposes." The boy looked confused, so Aaron continued softly. "Some people are given comfort because they need peace. Others are given hardship because they are capable of becoming stronger through it." The boy sat beside him, quietly listening. Aaron explained that life is not always fair, but fairness was never the purpose of existence. Growth was, wisdom was, discipline was. The strongest people are rarely born in easy situations, Aaron said. Most are created through pain. The boy admitted that he often complained because his family was poor and other children mocked him at school. Aaron smiled faintly because the story sounded painfully familiar. "Listen carefully," he said. "Never allow people who have suffered less than you to decide your value." Those words lit something inside the boy's mind. Aaron then added, "One day your pain will either become your excuse or your power. That choice belongs to you." The river continued flowing quietly while darkness slowly covered the mountains. And though the conversation lasted less than an hour, it changed the direction of that young boy's life forever as years passed. Aaron became known not only for his wisdom, but also for his unusual calmness during crises. Whenever disaster struck nearby villages, fires, storms, failed harvests, people naturally turned to him for guidance because he never panicked. One summer, a severe drought devastated the entire region. Crops died beneath the burning sun, rivers shrank dangerously low, and fear spread among villagers rapidly. Many people became angry and hopeless. Arguments broke out daily in the markets over food and water supplies. Some accused leaders of failure, while others cursed fate itself. Yet through all the chaos, Aaron remained calm. Every morning, he organized water distribution fairly and helped weaker families survive without demanding anything in return. One exhausted villager finally asked him, "How do you stay peaceful when everyone else is losing hope?" Aaron handed the man a bucket of water and answered softly, "Because panic never solved suffering." The villager shook his head sadly. "But aren't you afraid?" Aaron looked toward the dry fields and replied, "Fear is natural, but allowing fear to control your actions creates more destruction." Slowly, Aaron's calmness spread to others. People began working together instead of fighting. Families shared resources instead of hoarding them selfishly. Even during one of the hardest years in memory, Aaron taught them an important Stoic lesson. Strong people do not waste energy complaining about reality. They focus on improving what they can while accepting what they cannot control. By the time rain finally returned months later, the villagers realized something profound. Aaron's greatest gift was not physical strength or wealth. It was emotional stability. In a world full of panic, that kind of calmness became priceless. One cold morning, a wealthy traveler from the city arrived in the village, searching specifically for Aaron after hearing countless stories about him. The traveler wore expensive clothing, carried gold jewelry, and spoke with the confidence of someone used to luxury. Yet beneath his polished appearance, Aaron immediately noticed exhaustion in the man's eyes. During their conversation, the traveler admitted he had everything most people desired: wealth, status, power, but still felt deeply unhappy. "I worked my entire life to become successful," the man confessed bitterly, "yet I have no peace." Aaron listened quietly before asking one simple question: "And how much time did you spend building your mind while building your fortune?" The traveler fell silent instantly. Aaron explained that most people spend years strengthening their careers while neglecting their character completely. They chase external success, believing it will heal internal emptiness. But without discipline, gratitude, and emotional control, success often magnifies suffering instead of removing it. "You can own half the world," Aaron said calmly, "and still remain a prisoner of your own thoughts." The traveler lowered his eyes slowly, because deep inside, he knew the words were true. Aaron then pointed toward a farmer nearby, working peacefully under the morning sun. "That man owns very little," he explained softly. "Yet he sleeps peacefully every night, because his happiness does not depend on status." The wealthy traveler stayed in the village for several weeks afterward, learning from Aaron's mindset. Before leaving, he admitted something painful. "I spent years becoming rich, but never learned how to become peaceful." Aaron smiled faintly and replied, "Many people realize that too late." As the traveler disappeared down the dusty road, Aaron understood once again that strength without inner peace is meaningless. One afternoon, while repairing tools outside his workshop, Aaron noticed a group of young men arguing aggressively nearby. Their voices grew louder until one finally shoved another violently to the ground. Villagers gathered quickly, expecting a fight. But before the situation worsened, Aaron calmly walked toward them. "What are you fighting for?" he asked quietly. One young man pointed angrily at the other and shouted, "He insulted me in front of everyone." Aaron looked at him calmly and replied, "And now you are insulting yourself through your behavior." The crowd became silent immediately. The young man clenched his fist angrily. "So I should just tolerate disrespect?" Aaron shook his head gently. "No, but reacting emotionally gives other people power over your mind." The second young man scoffed impatiently. "Staying calm doesn't solve everything." Aaron nodded. "True, but losing control usually makes everything worse." For several moments, nobody spoke. Then Aaron continued, "Weak men react immediately because ego controls them. Strong men pause because wisdom controls them." The tension slowly disappeared from the group. One of the younger boys watching nearby whispered quietly, "How does he always know what to say?" An elderly villager smiled softly and answered, "Because pain taught him lessons anger never could." That evening, many people reflected deeply on Aaron's words. They realized emotional reactions often create suffering far greater than the original problem itself. And once again, Aaron's quiet discipline changed lives without force, without shouting, and without pride. Years later, Aaron's mother passed away peacefully in her sleep during early winter. Though she had grown weak with age, her death still struck Aaron deeply. She had been the last living connection to his difficult childhood and the sacrifices that shaped him. During the funeral, snow fell silently across the village while people gathered to offer condolences. Many expected Aaron to collapse emotionally after losing the person he loved most. Instead, he stood quietly beside her grave with calm sadness in his eyes. A young villager finally approached him and asked softly, "How do you remain so strong after all this loss?" Aaron looked toward the snowy mountains before answering, "Because love does not disappear when someone dies." Tears filled his eyes, but his voice remained steady. Grief is part of being human. Complaining about death will not stop it. That night, alone inside his small home, Aaron allowed himself to cry freely for the first time in years. Stoicism had never taught him to suppress emotions completely. It taught him not to become destroyed by them. As he sat beside the dying fire, remembering his mother's sacrifices, he realized something beautiful. Suffering had not hardened his heart. It had deepened it. Many people mistake emotional numbness for strength, but true Stoic strength means remaining compassionate despite pain. And even after losing nearly everyone he loved, Aaron still chose kindness over bitterness.